Morning all. Lovely to see such a big crowd this morning. Lovely to see the usual suspects that keep turning up each month, and lovely to see some first timers as well. Some of you have come a very short distance, but we've got one person who's, at least one person, maybe two, that have come from Melbourne. So that'll be good, right? So I guess Robyn's fame has spread far and wide, and she doesn't really need much of an introduction, but I'll tell you the little bit that we've been able to glean. Robyn is a Shoalhaven historian and author who in 2017, as you can see, was awarded the Medal of the Order of Australia for service to community history and heritage preservation. Robyn was born in Berry, and she tells me that her mother and father were married in this church, and she was baptised in this church, so she really is a local. She's also obviously passionate about history and heritage preservation, and has served on many different societies and committees, including a long list: Berry District Historical Society, the Shoalhaven Historical Society and Nowra Museum, Shoalhaven Family History Society, the Centenary Commemoration of Gallipoli and the Waratah March, Kiama Heritage Review with Kiama Council, and the Heritage Study of the City of Shoalhaven. She's also written many books and articles on a range of history and heritage topics, and we're going to hear about a couple of those stories today. Let's welcome Robyn.
Thank you for inviting me. I haven't done this for a long time, so if I get a few hiccups, you'll have to forgive me. The research into the history of Bailey's Island began when accessioning photographs in the Gerringong Historical Society's collection. We came across 7 photographs which had written story attached to each of them. A house, a houseboat, a cottage, a bridge and cleared land, and they had been donated to the Society by Sue Samways, the daughter of Selwyn McClelland. The notes were written by Selwyn prior to his death from cancer on the 20th of April 2011, and he told of his life on Bailey's Island at Gerroa. Selwyn was the son of Harold McClelland and Isabel Larter, and younger brother of Athol. They lived in a house built by Harold in Prince Alfred Street, Berry. When Selwyn was quite young, his parents separated, and Selwyn never saw his father again. His mother had taken up with Walter Bailey, who was at that time building the bridge over Broughton Creek at Wharf Road. His mother eventually lived on Bailey's Island and changed her name by deed on the 12th of May 1954 to Isabel Bailey. So Bailey's Island is located on the peninsula in the estuary of the Crooked River and Blue Angle Creek, and bounded on the west by Cleary Brothers, and was named after Joshua Walter George Bailey, who for a number of years lived on the peninsula after completing the construction of the Crooked River traffic bridge in 1938. So that section that in the middle is actually the island. So it's only on the peninsula, it's only called an island after Bailey, so it's not really an island. The Crooked River is a meandering watercourse which had its source in the foothills of the Bonbon Range west of Gerringong and enters the ocean at the junction of the Rock Platform and 7 Mile Beach. The river bears the name of Crooked River on a plan of survey of early grants in this locality, measured by surveyor Thomas Florance in 1826. Blue Angle Creek flows from Crooked River in a southerly direction parallel to the 7 Mile Beach. Joshua Walter George Bailey was born at Bomaderry in 1881, the youngest of 5 children born to Joshua and Harriet Bailey, née Collins. The family lived in the homestead Rowallian, located in Rue Street, on the site occupied now by the Bomaderry Hotel. Walter married Annie Veronica McCarthy at Wickham in 1902 and they lived at Cardiff with their 8 children. Walter took up bridge building with his brother, Joseph, and they constructed many bridges throughout New South Wales. He had just completed the narrow wharf on the Shoalhaven River in 1937 when he won the tender to erect a bridge over Broughton Creek at Wharf Road. To build the bridge, so this is before the bridge was up. To build the bridge, he required a punt to carry the pile driver on the water in order to drive the piles into the sand and mud at the bottom of the creek. He purchased a punt that was used at Back Forest, ferrying people, stock and vehicles across the mouth of Broughton Creek. It ended its service when the completion of the bridge in July 1936. So if anyone's going out to Shoalhaven Neds from Berry, you go along Bowlong Road, you cross the bridge at Broughton Creek at Back Forest, and that was where the punt was. So it went from one side of Bowlong to the other side of Back Forest. You can just see it there with the bridge in the background. The punt had been constructed by boat builders Robert Armstrong and William Kennedy and began service in May 1927, the contract price being £365. The punt is 36 feet long, exclusive of the wings, 16 foot wide, and draws as it stands 13 inches of water. It has a carrying capacity of 30 tonnes. It is strong and to all appearances faithfully built. The timber on the punt itself is stringy bark, while Armstrong and Kennedy claim is eminently suitable for the purpose, and the decking is 2-inch Oregon, and the sheathing is of pure copper. While constructing the bridge, Walter lived in the Berry Hotel. It was while he was living in Berry that he met Isabel McClelland. She was a housekeeper. After the completion of the Wharf Road Bridge, he then proceeded to repair the Far Meadow Bridge and undertook the construction of Swamp Road. He placed a tender with Gerringong Municipal Council for the construction of a timber-beam bridge to be built across the Crooked River at Gerroa, the bridge being about 450 feet in length and 16 feet width. On the 23rd of February 1838, Gerringong Council announced that his tender of £3,524 had been accepted. So Walter arranged with Thomas Childs and Sons of Balmain, Sydney, for their coastal vessel, the SS Erina, to tow the punt, now having a capacity of 60 tonnes, from the Wharf Road Bridge on Broughton Creek to the famous 7 Mile Beach, Gerringong, a total of 30 miles. The SS Erina was a steamship with a genuine identity on the Georges River. She was 82 foot long and 18 feet across the beam and was launched at Erina Creek near Gosford in 1903. The journey to the Crooked River began on Friday morning, the 12th of August 1838 at 4:30 a.m. and took about 4 hours to complete. Sailing down the Broughton Creek into the Shoalhaven River through the heads and out to sea, eventually reaching Crooked River safely, where the punt was breached and then handed across the sand, hauled across the sand into the river ready for use. To haul the punt across the beach, Bailey had the assistance of his capable foreman George Hilton and his son Paddy, and 7 other men on Bailey's staff. It took 5 hours to haul the massive punt across the beach into the river, a distance of 300 yards. Mr McLean of 7 Mile Beach witnessed the towing. Myself being an interested eyewitness from the time the captain of the Erina arrived outside the breakers at 7 Mile Beach, where he cast the tow rope of the punt overboard, and having it to manoeuvre the Erina into such a position that she would not come into contact with the drifting punt. Likewise, the rolling breakers on the beach was a splendid act of seamanship on the captain's part. 2 of Mr Bailey's men, his foreman George Hilton and his son Paddy, deserve special praise in the achievement, as those 2 gallant fellows rowed on the punt from Broughton Creek to within a safe distance of the 7 Mile Beach. On arrival in the proximity of the beach, Mr Hilton had to transfer from the punt to an ordinary rowing boat, which was no easy task out in the open sea, and to endeavour with the use of the rowing boat to land on the beach through the breakers, a 2.5-inch rope measuring 1,500 feet in length being attached to the punt, and this task was successfully accomplished by Paddy, who remained on the punt to pay out the 1,500-foot rope. This was very essential as the remainder of Mr Barley's men on the beach, on making contact with the rope, commenced to pull his massive punt through the surf to the beach. Just a minute, wrong page. To get the punt across the beach to the river, Mr Barley had to use his modern 40 horsepower Caterpillar tractor to assist the men to haul the punt in this task. No doubt the whole job was a remarkable feat, and those folk who were fortunate to witness the feat being performed, I feel sure or venture to say, will join me in offering Mr Barley and his team of gallant men the highest praise for bringing forward to a successful conclusion what in the first place seemed to be an almost impossible task. Clive Emery also lived at Gerroa, and he witnessed the event. To bring the dredge pontoon used for the pole driving across the 300 yards of 7 Mile Beach from the sea to the river, seeing it weighed several tonnes, was where ingenuity was displayed in its true form. This was achieved by laying large poles on the sand in a lengthwise layout, upon which he placed short poles across to be used as rollers, and upon which the heavy pontoon was drawn with his light Caterpillar tractor by using ropes and pulleys, and proved not a problem to them. With the pile driver in position in the river, construction of the bridge began. So there you can see the pile driver putting in the photo of the bridge. And that's it completed. On completion of the road bridge, he built a houseboat on the punt and lived on it until his homestead was built, and then enterprisingly rented it out to visitors in the area being moored at the bank of the river. In March 1940, permissive occupancy was granted to Walter Bailey of the Crooked River for the purpose of mooring a houseboat against land under Gerringong Municipal Council's control. In November, Council agreed that the houseboat be allowed to remain in its present position for the duration of the war. At this time, Isabel McClellan and her son Selwyn moved onto the boat. This is the houseboat that I lived in on my first introduction to my mother's new boyfriend. The punt that the household was built on was used to carry the pile driver. With the pile driver dismantled, it was decided to build a house on it, and I lived in it for a short time. The outside railing is not shown in the photograph, but one was installed and all the way around it. Under the shade of the punt, many fish would congregate, and I would tie a fishing line to the railing and catch fish occasionally. The high pole at the end of the house was for electricity. There was a flat-bottom boat moored to the houseboat, and I would go rowing around the river at dusk, and on 3 occasions I was lucky enough to have 3 big mullet jump into the boat. I have never seen so many fish in all my life. The river was a mass of fish as the place was undiscovered by the people, as not many people had cars. The mouth of the river was mostly closed or too shallow for fish to get in or out of the river, so the fish that lived in the river kept on breeding. Running around the tracks made in the tea tree scrub was fantastic for a kid my age. It was like a maze trying to find my way back to the houseboat. I had a very happy time there, for I never went to school. The ripples you can see on the water was lovely to hear in bed at night, lapping against the side of the punt when the northeast was blowing. With the aid of the outside light and a large scoop net, I was able to catch prawns swimming in the gaps between the houseboat and land, enough to have a feed for supper. The photo of the houseboat extension built on land due to the fact we kept putting off the job of recorking all the joints in the timber, and the punt that the house was built on. As a result, it took in water and sank. There was no one on board at the time. It slow demise to the bottom. We raised it up and built it on land and let it as a holiday cottage. At the time this occurred, we had nearly finished the homestead on Bailey's Island, and as a 9-year-old kid, it was a fabulous experience as my life was all play and no school. In September 1944, it was reported at Gerringong Council meeting that the electricity service was connected to the re-erected houseboat, which was now a cottage erected on the property adjoining the Crooked River. It was named Shangri-La Cottage and contained accommodation for 6, 2 iron single beds, a wooden single bed, a double bed and a children's cot. Walter never intended to live on the houseboat permanently. He had purchased 4.5 acres of land from William Sharp, which became known as Bailey's Island. It was then in the state it is now, all thick bush and scrub. And Gerringong Municipal Council approved the construction of a caretaker's cottage on Blue Ankle Creek in January 1943. This is a photograph that urged me to do more research. Over the years, 2 more cottages were built on the leased land as holiday rental cottages named Blue Haven and Jasmine, and both were built of fibro with an iron roof. Blue Haven had accommodation for 8, while Jasmine accommodated for 5. The Caterpillar tractor was used to lift the pile driver, was used to flatten the scrub, and we would spend all day piling it up to be burnt off. We had a clearing made big enough to build a house from most of the timber left over from the brickwork. A few trees were felled, but not many, to make way for the large shed that was built for the car and storage, and eventually the bales as a couple of cows were put on the place to help keep it clean. Later, a bridge was built, as the cows never had much to eat on the island, even though I planted a lot of grass cuttings and watered them twice a day. With the bridge built, I cleared the land with the creek to the main road, or should I say at that time it was a sand track of 2 ruts in the sand. Here I also planted grass for the benefit of the cows, that by now were 4 animals, and we sent a bore to pump up the water to water the grass twice a day. So I can attribute that lovely lawn on the camping reserve to my hard work of pumping water. The New South Wales Government Gazette of 1950 records Walter registering his cattle at Blue Ankle Park. At the Gerringong Council meeting held on the 27th of August 1951, Bailey was given permission to erect a shop on land at Gerroa adjoining the camping area, and subsequently a store was built at the rear of the homestead, and every person that came to the shop always commented and praised my mother for the garden she had created. Arthur Campbell remembered the house and bridge. A little bridge was built across Blue Ankle Creek, and Mrs. Bailey operated morning and afternoon teas and lunches from this house. She had a garden, and she used to have provisions to sell for holiday makers who parked their caravans on the reserve. In those days there were no current camping in tents. It was just a picnic area. At one time, Mr. Goddard used to be the supervisor and would charge 2 shillings to have a picnic in the area, and Mrs. Bailey operated the rooms for a number of years. Walter was keenly interested in the development of the district and served as an alderman on Gerringong Municipal Council between the years 1953 to 1954, being in office at the time of amalgamation with Kiama. Walter died at Blue Ankle Park on the 25th of July 1961, aged 80 years. He had been ill for 21 days prior to his death, and his funeral took place at Wollongong Crematorium. On his death, his estate was worth £7,100, and in his will he left £600 to Isabel Bailey, no relation. on the sale of the property as long as Isabel Bailey, who performed household and business duties, remained until his death. The donor of the photograph visited the area prior to writing his notes and wrote, "If you could get across the island today, the little bridge has fallen down or been dismantled, and you could force your way through the dense bush and you would see the concrete foundations of the old house." A vegetation survey comprised by Muskin in August 1984 for Cranmer Municipal Council states that numerous garden relic and escaped species once occur around demolished buildings. The land was bought by Cranmer Council in 1983 for $80,000, and in November the council called for registration of interest by developers for the 4-hectare site. The site, a former dairy farm, is heavily forested and next to the council caravan park at 7 Mile Beach and connected to the Shoalhaven-Taroa Road by a wooden bridge. The guidelines for the development include the establishment of 30 holiday units, managers' residence, recreation centre, pool and boat launch facilities. The South Coast Conservation Society was opposed to the development and wrote to the New South Wales Minister for Planning and Environment, Mr Sheen, asking that it to be incorporated into the park. A spokesman for the society said that the island, which was formerly used as a dairy and contained partly demolished sheds, was one of the last remaining high dunes rainforest areas on the south coast. The sewage treatment plant was established in 2000 and the local Landcare group began regenerating the Bailey Island area. In 2014, the Nature Conservation Council supported the calls of the local community to have the remaining forested area adjoining the national park, including the whole of the land known locally as Bailey's Island, protected by acquisition by the state government, and to be added to the 7 Mile Beach National Park to improve its ecological viability and provide some effective protection to the endangered ecological communities associated with the local vegetation. Today, 7 Mile Beach Caravan Park is located on the site. That's it.
Has anybody got any questions for Robyn? Any questions? Tammy, I don't know whether I can put you on the spot, but we have someone here today who's George Bailey's great granddaughter. Is that right? Yeah. And yes. Can you come and tell us just a little bit about? This is Lynn, and she and her husband have come up from Victoria when she heard that this talk was going to be on, because her great-grandfather was George Bailey. So just tell us a little bit about what you remember.
I've learned more in that last half hour, 66 years of my life. But thank you for having us. Robyn, that's amazing. A lot of the things you said, I have these triggers come up that I remember family members talking about. And one that stuck to me just then was George Hilton, I think and I remember his name coming up, and I remember my nan, her name was also Isabel Bailey, married to Walter's first son, I think, John, and my nan used to talk about Walter this, he's the boss. So very recently, since I got the little clipping from Tammy, my friend, I seen Walter there, and I thought, oh, that triggers something, and I've been told all about the Crooked River as a kid and the bridge, and I've been across that footbridge to the house, and we were taking these kids across there and being told stories. So it's all very sort of emotional, they coming up with all that. But yes, so our connection is that my father was Jack William Bailey. Some of you might remember him as a Shoalhaven City Councillor, and when you talk about things like the Punt and Broughton Creek, now it's all sort of, the story of my life seems to be coming together with things like the Punt on Broughton Creek, and my dad bought a farm at Broughton Vale, and there's a lot of things that I think is now connected. Like, he went into farming, my dad, and the cattle on that Bailey's Island, which I've never heard it called Bailey's Island before today, because I just thought it was the place where the little house was. So, and the big memory for me was also that footbridge as a child that we used to get trotted across there to go over there. But that, seeing the pictures, it all brought it was sort of become real. So today, my husband and I, Robert, we moved from Berry in 1978, I think it was, and bought a property. My parents bought a property, Jack and Beverly Bailey, at Wellington in central west New South Wales. And then I met my husband and we got married and have children now who moved to Victoria. And we weren't seen when we lived in New South Wales, so we travelled, bought a property in Victoria, and we've been there 10 years. But I feel that, I always say to Tammy, when I come to Berry, I feel it's home. I don't feel Wellington was ever my home, and I don't feel Victoria's my home. And now I sort of feel that I'm connected through all this history. And it's nice to feel connected to the country and the land and the ancestors, but until today I knew very little about Walter, I must say. So thank you, Robyn, for that. And my son just rang me not long before you started. He said they're very keen to hear about all this because we don't know much about Walter. It's funny how generations now talk more openly and have the freedom of internet and all these terrific devices. You can connect with each other all across the world, but in those days it was photographs. So they're quite a precious thing, I think, to keep. And if it was at all possible, Robyn, I'd like to talk to you.
USB taken, you can have a speech.
That would be wonderful. So anyway, I'm really pleased to see everyone here and have such interest, and thank you very much. And I enjoyed it, and I hope you all enjoyed it. And thank you, Robyn, very much. You're brilliant. Thank you. Oh yeah, Tammy, just because I just sort of talk about things from time to time, and my grandmother, Isabel, and that's the other thing, there's a lot of names in the Bailey family, more modern day, we've got Patrick, we've got Joshua, we've got John, we've got, they all seem to be coming up. And my grandmother, Isabel, used to talk about Walter the boss, like he's the boss. And that's what resonates with me. And then when I seen the clipping that Robyn was talking today, my daughter-in-law, who looks into the ancestry, on her side of the family, she started Googling about this and going on to Ancestry, and one of the big pictures that came up was that headstone with Walter, boss. So it also went, the pennies all dropped, yeah. So thank you very much, and we're very, very happy to listen to Robyn today, and thank you.
We thank Robyn very much for her time today on that interesting talk. She's done heaps and heaps of research in the local area, and she's a real storyteller. She's written books. We have one in the library, and there's quite a lot in the museum.
There's heaps in the
about David Berry Hospital, the history of Broughton Vale, and lots of different places in our local area. So the museum would be a good start to have a look at some of Robyn's research that she's done. And it was a lovely, not coincidence, but lovely thing that you came up with that.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you everybody for coming. Please stay, have more coffee and tea. And were there any questions for Robyn? No, it was such a comprehensive thing, such a lot of detail. It was fabulous. Yeah. Okay, thank you everybody. Please stay and have a cup of coffee.